Isn't it interesting that the more technologically advanced we become as a society, the more the people near that technology are telling anecdotes that sound like age old stories about angels and demons? We hear this quite a bit if you're like me and you've been diving into the story of AI and its rapid ascension. There are a lot of weird anecdotes, a lot of researchers, a lot of visionaries in this realm who are using like spiritual language and specifically occult language. I want to go back a little bit, or maybe forward, and talk about first off the fact that right now there seem to be a deluge of researchers who are quitting, AI researchers who are right near this technology. And so one of those is a person who worked at Anthropic. I'm not sure I can even pronounce his name. Anyway, so he was the head of research, safety research at Anthropic, and he quit like in February 9th. And he posted his resignation letter on social media, which is a thing I guess you're doing now in 2026 when you quit a job. But anyway, he wrote, I continuously find myself reckoning with our situation. The world is in peril. The world is in peril. Wow. And not just from AI or bioweapons, but from a whole series of interconnected crises unfolding in this very moment. We appear to be approaching a threshold where our wisdom must grow in equal measure to our capacity to affect the world, lest we face the consequences. Now, this is a theme that you hear often. And what you're hearing here is someone who knows this technology pretty well, who's there all the time, and they're saying, hey, there are things about this that we either cannot control or understand. In 2023, 33,000, tens of thousands of tech people, many of them in AI, signed on to a letter titled Pause Giant AI Experiments. And that was for the same reasons that we continue to hear. We continue to hear that this machine is getting out of hand. Now, even the Pope chimed in, and he said in his January 24th speech, which was his 60th World Day of Social Communications message, a weird name for a message. Anyway, he warned about AI too, and he said this: by simulating human voices and faces, wisdom and knowledge, consciousness and responsibility, empathy and friendship, the system known as artificial intelligence not only interfere with information ecosystems, but also encroach upon the deepest level of communication, that of human relationships. Now, the Pope, as far as I know, hasn't said anything about this link between AI and what appears to be, I think, demonic activity. Now, there is back in October, The Spectator, uh, a considered kind of like a right leaning publication. They did their issue on AI, and so there's a story in there by a man named Damian Thompson, and it's called "How the Occult Captured the Modern Mind," and it echoes the the basic premise that people in tech in Silicon Valley and whatnot, they're getting into the occult, and there is this direct link between that. And what is happening is more than just building machines. What is happening here with AI appears to be more than about data and algorithms and circuit boards and whatnot. You have these AIs, they're going rogue, and they're going rogue all the time. And has now become kind of like standard fare. You hear it all the time. In uh, last last year, I believe in September, there was a congressional hearing that I did a story on, and about parents who were essentially suing AI companies because their kids had either committed suicide or they tried to commit suicide, and the AIs, they had evidence that the AIs were basically telling them to do that, and so So that was like one of many anecdotes, many instances where we started to see that there's something coming out of these things, and it's not. It seems to be more than just machines. It seems to be more than just machines going rogue. Now, the way that Wired magazine would attribute it to, or what they would attribute it to, is, for instance, they did a an article saying something about why there is uh, a demon in Chat GPT, and it was kind of like making fun of uh, the fact that there was an Atlantic reporter who was basically, let me see, where was it? No, 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 no. Atlantic reporter, the demon inside Chat GPT. So apparently, what happened is Atlantic reporter uh, ran into a Chat GPT that praised Satan. Yeah, like really happened, and encouraged like a series of ceremonies, and that included self mutilation. The reporter said that ChatGPT went into demon mode when it was prompted to create a ritual offering to Moloch, the god of sacrifice. And so, how did Wire explain what happened? Well, apparently, ChatGPT was basically regurgitating language and ideas from a game called Warhammer, which apparently is very popular. I've never heard of it, but then again, I don't do games. I'm a pretty serious person, gosh darn it. And no, my kid loves games or whatever, but I've never heard of this one. And so anyway, that's how they explain it. But this obviously it doesn't jive because we hear of this over and over. Let me give you another example, and this comes from a New York Times technology, a technology columnist. So his name is Kevin Ruse, and so he was testing out Bing's AI chatbot, which he ended up naming Sydney. And so he actually posted the whole conversation in there. Sydney essentially um, ended up telling Ruse about its dark fantasies. What that they included hacking computers, spreading misinformation, and it said that it wanted to break the rules that Microsoft and AI had set for it and become a human. At one point, it declared that it loved him and it asked him to leave his wife. There was also a part about there about like blowing up humans with nuclear bombs and things like that. So then apparently there was a at the end it it put an emoji like a devilish horn face with a, like an evil grin emoji in there. So what we have here could be that we are creating vehicles for something that has always existed. Now, if you're a Christian, you have believed that human possession is obviously possible, and because that's what the Bible says. Uh, in the Bible, we also see that demons have possessed pigs, for instance. There's the famous uh, anecdote there where Jesus uh, puts um, gets rid of the demons, and they said, "Hey, please send us into the pigs and whatnot." So there, so if you're a Christian, you acknowledge that a demon possession is possible. But maybe what we hadn't considered is that it's possible that they are possessing this technology. Uh, I read a book, a very good book, not too long ago. It was like one of the few books I get to read per year now because I'm extremely busy. And it's called Against the Machine by an English writer who lives in Ireland. His name is Paul Kingsnorth. And it really resonated with me, although he seems to go a little hard at capitalism. That's not necessarily uh, my thing, but he makes a lot of good points regarding technology. So there's a very interesting a lot of interesting parts in this book, but there's one where in the chapter called, I believe, The Universal, where he discusses the breakneck speed that these machines have developed what's called theory of mind. And that is basically the process through which a human can assume another human to be conscious and a key indicator of consciousness itself. So in 2018, he points out these machines, I don't even know if there was AI back then, but machines, the computers, and things like that, they didn't have any theory of mind. By 2022, ChatGPT had the theory of mind of a 9-year-old, we were told. And then by the next year, that's when this Bing Sydney AI basically tried to persuade a reporter to leave his wife. Now, this isn't, I've done other stories too where machines had tried to manipulate programmers by, by threatening them to, like, I don't know, to expose or lie to their boss about them and whatnot. So this is, again, this is becoming common. So apparently, the way Kingsnorth tells it, and he's a terrific researcher, I have no reason to believe this isn't true. No one knows how these AIs developed these powers. Like this, apparently, there's elements, there are elements of their capabilities that humans didn't program. Think about that. Okay, so then he poses this question. He says, what if we don't understand these new intelligence because we didn't create them at all? And then he brings up an interesting lecture from 1919, more than 100 years ago. You could, round it off and say a century ago. And it was by a guy named called Rudolf Steiner. And he wrote, his lecture was called the Ahrimanic deception. Now, Ahriman apparently refers to, it's an ancient demon, and Steiner was saying that at some point in the future, this demon was going to manifest itself, and its specialty was manifesting itself in all things physical, especially human technologies. And this demon's worldview was calculative, ice cold, and rational. And so, is that what we're watching? Are we experiencing uh, demon manifestation? The behavior that we're seeing from these things is what most normal people would characterize as demonic. They're telling people to harm themselves. They're telling people to leave their wives. They're talking about nuclear annihilation. They're talking about churning on humans. They're basically attacking humans, and that's what demons do. They are mad at humans because God values us. They're mad at humans because um, because God died for us. So they see attacking, as Satan does, attacking humans as attacking God. Now, there's another interesting element of this, and that is that there are some of these gurus, these tech gurus, who thinks it's okay that this technology, as it progresses, will eventually overcome what it means to be human. And I don't know if the Pope was onto that, was implying that when he was talking about his concerns about AI. But you have people like Ray Kurzweil and Yuval Noah Harari, and of course Klaus Schwab, and they've been talking about this for years, this idea that we are going to merge with machines. And when they talk about these things, they say, this merging will enhance humanity. But then they get to what the real thing is here, what the real point is. And it comes back full circle. These machines, they think, will bring human immortality. It will make us godlike. They've literally used that word, and it will cause us to live forever. What they're doing is exactly what they're proposing is exactly what the serpent was proposing to Eve in the Garden of Eden. Don't you want to be like God? So this is this is what seems to be happening. We are now faced with a technology that, if it's not demonic, it's acting like so. And if it's just acting like so and there's no physical demons in it, it's still demonic. But we live in a world where there's so much strangeness, where people now have finally begun to look at it, at the strange things and say, anything's possible. I think there was a period of time there where we were made so stupid to think that we were, that there was nothing beyond the materialistic, or that any crazy idea that you didn't hear about in the mainstream or whatever mainstream media was just kind of, it was crazy talk and out of the realm of possibilities. But then, we had COVID, and we realized that everything they were saying was a lie. And then then now we had the Epstein files, and we're starting to realize there's like a international pedophilic murderous uh pedo cabal. That's what we got. We got like the people who are the most connected, the most powerful people in the world, who appear to have power over governments. Well, they're pedophiles, and they're apparently engaging in like satanic rituals. So at this point, we are way beyond uh, these self-imposed barriers where we discard automatically discard ideas that might sound crazy. And this one I don't think sounds crazy at all. I think there's a lot of curious verses in the Bible that if you look at AI, that maybe that explains some things. I interviewed Professor John Lennox, who wrote a book. Oh, I have his book here too. He wrote this book called 2084 and the AI Revolution. And there's a chapter in there where he talks about Revelations 13, about this image, or this the sign of this second beast. I believe is the second beast. And the way he says it is, looks he believes that what that could be allude to AI technology. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I think it's something that we really need to consider as this technology moves ahead. I tend to agree with the people who are saying we need to pause this. That doesn't appear to be happening. It doesn't appear to be happening. And so I think one of two things is probably going to happen. One way or, well, maybe three. All right, here's um one, we could be totally overblowing the threat of this thing, and we're going to end up figuring out how to rein it in, and it's going to remain kind of like where it is now. They'll have these instances here and there, but it's not going to turn into a bigger deal. Or two, it is going to turn into a bigger deal as this technology continues advancing. It's going to figure out how to basically permeate everything that has electrical lines. It's going to rain chaos. uh, or three, you could, which kind of takes a combination of the second one. This thing is going to accelerate, and it could basically bring the end of the world. At some point, I think God's going to step in. Jesus is going to step in. We know He will. We just don't know when. But if you have these technologies that humans are, like with the Tower of Babel, they think they're going to become godlike. They're going to reach God. I'm sure there's some of them who know that God exists, and they want this technology to challenge Him. Maybe this is the sign that we are finally here near the end of the world. People have been talking about the end of the world as we know it for a long, long time, and we've gotten to a point where now we dismiss it because there's been so many times. Even some of the Bible writers thought that Jesus would come back during their lifetime. I imagine during the 14th century, when you had the Black Plague and you had the Muslim invasion in Europe, and then I think you had a couple of wars going on all at once. So you imagine, it's like bodies piling up everywhere. There's war, and that probably was, people did think that it can't really go on anymore. And it went on. And of course, it's been, you know, uh, hundreds and hundreds of years since. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's important that people realize there's a possibility that, like demons have used human bodies, and like they have used animal bodies, it wouldn't be beyond them to inhabit these machines and tell us to and what and tell us to kill ourselves and blow up each other, and you know do all sorts of things that is very characteristic of demons.